Hey, what's up everyone? Today I wanted to continue my series on language learning and language learning apps with the app called Ling. So this is going to be an app that's available on the App Store as well as the Google Play Store and as an online web-based application, much like Rosetta Stone, which I had talked about in my last video in the series, which you can check out right over here if you missed it. You can get into this with either a subscription model or a pay once for everything model, as I had mentioned in my Rosetta Stone video, which is really nice, and I think that paying just one time to get access to all the languages is really the way to go, but many of you will probably still go for the subscription model since it is cheaper as far as an upfront cost. But regardless of which way you go with, I'll be discussing my experience with the app and how I use it, what it does well, what it doesn't do so well, and finally wrap up with my final thoughts. So let's get into it. For pricing, they have an annual subscription plan which starts at $120 per year, but right now they have a sale for New Year's, and so you can actually get that whole year for $70. Or you can pay a monthly cost of $15 per month, and that can go on for as long as you want, and then you can cancel at any time. Or you could do what I did, which is go for the lifetime subscription, which is going to be $150, and all of their plans give you access to every language on the app. So if you guys would like to give this a try, please follow the links down in the description to get started. I am a Ling affiliate, so if you do use those, it will be helping out the channel a little bit, but that is not going to be swaying my opinion or my thoughts that I'm going to be presenting here on the app whatsoever. So with the pricing out of the way, you may be saying to yourself, I've never heard of this app before. Is it really that good? Why would I go with this app over something that's more common like Duolingo or Rosetta Stone? Well, for starters, one of the things that Ling does extremely well is that it offers more languages and more obscure languages than pretty much any other app that I've seen. This app is my app of choice for learning Afrikaans as well as Bengali, since both of those languages are less widely available on other apps than languages like Spanish, French, German, or Russian, which are much, much more common. So this is a really big bonus of using this app over others. The lesson structure is also something that I quite like. It's very simple and it teaches you words and phrases that you can start using in real life within only a matter of minutes. Each lesson within each language consists of 4 parts and has an exam at the end in which you're going to be learning words that are relevant to your topic. And also the lesson structure is pretty consistent, with each lesson teaching you a handful of words with sentences with those words, and then also having those words being used in the context of a conversation. The lesson progression is pretty simple, and it starts with you having to construct or translate sentences by tapping on words to place them in the correct order. This teaches you how sentence structure works in your target language. Finally, each lesson ends with a conversation between 2 speakers in which you're going to be hearing, in which you may hear some words that are unfamiliar to you at first, but over time you're going to become more familiar with, and things will start to make a little bit more sense as you start filling in the missing gaps with more and more lessons throughout the program. And so that is a really cool thing and a general overview of how this app works. Now, this approach to language learning always couples your target language with your native language, so that way you're never in the dark as far as needing to go to an external translator to figure out what they're saying, which can be the case sometimes with more immersion-based applications like Rosetta Stone. This is a nice aspect of the app for those of you who want to make sure that you're understanding things as you're being taught right away. Again, as I said, this is in contrast to things like Rosetta Stone, where your native language is pretty much never used except for in lesson titles and things like that. So this app is going to be a little bit more easy, I think, for some beginners than something like Rosetta Stone, where you're starting from absolute zero and being thrown into it. This sort of starts you off a little bit more easily and a little bit more slowly. So that is something that is pretty nice. And one of the things that I really like is that it uses vocabulary that is more useful in the day-to-day, rather than starting you off from absolute basics the way that Rosetta Stone does and then building you up from there. This really just starts off right away with useful phrases and other things like that that you can get started using right away. And I think that that's a pretty positive thing for people with busy lifestyles, because as I had said, these lessons are relatively short and can be done in only a couple of minutes. So that is nice. But that being said, although I do like the approach in general, there are many things that I don't like and many things that I would recommend you do if you are going to be making progress in your target language. The first thing that I would recommend doing is getting a grammar book or some other textbook for your target language, since you're really thrown straight into the language with the conjugations and everything already done for you. So in languages like Russian and Spanish, where there's gendered nouns, conjugations, and other nuances that you definitely won't pick up by just having things being done for you and being shown to you in a completed form, I think that that would really, really help you out quite a bit. You will be able to speak with this app though, which is really important and really nice. But as I had mentioned, if you really don't understand the mechanics of the language, it's not going to be quite as useful when you go to actually generate your own content and your own thoughts and express yourself. The next thing is that the lessons are quite repetitive and short, which again, is a pretty good thing for getting the information to stick, but unfortunately, once you learn all of the words in the lesson, you're going to have to wait until the conversation to hear the sentences in new context, because the activities that you do throughout the lesson are basically all just reused from the introductions of the words that you learn in the beginning. Now, one of the things that I highly recommend that you do also when you're doing these lessons is to have an iPad or a Kindle Scribe or just a plain notebook sitting around while you're going through your lessons with Ling. This way you can actually write down the words as you learn them, and you can write down the definition in your native language. You can also highlight the word as it appears in the sentence, so that way you can sort of start to figure out how sentences are constructed and how that relates to your native language. So that is something that I would really, really recommend you do alongside the activities that you actually already are going to be doing. This gives you extra practice and it helps you to remember things better since you're writing it down. It's going into your mind once because you're hearing it, it's going into your mind again because you're having to process it, and then it's coming out as a written form, and then you're seeing it on the page. So you're really getting a lot of reinforcement if you do that. Now, Ling, like other apps that offer a large number of languages, unfortunately doesn't offer speaking exercises with speech analysis for all of the languages that it offers. So for example, if you use the course for Russian or for Spanish or something like that, where it's a more common language and a more popular language, it's going to have pretty good speech recognition software, which is going to allow you to practice the words and sentences that you learn throughout the unit. Unfortunately though, the speaking parts are not quite as extensive as some other apps, but regardless, you're going to have the ability to practice in your target language out loud, which is great. For other languages though, like Bengali and Afrikaans, they are not going to be having speaking lessons. So in those cases, I would recommend that after you hear a word or after you hear a sentence, you try to actually verbally repeat it out loud, so that way you can try to match your accent to the accent of the native speaker who has recorded their voice. Although it's definitely a bit of a bummer that not all of the languages have the same exercises, I really do appreciate that this app, unlike some others, particularly Ling, which I'll talk about in an upcoming video, this app does use native speakers who have recorded themselves speaking to pronounce everything in the lessons, and this is great because you get to actually hear how all of the subtleties of the language come out through a native speaker, which is not something that you're necessarily going to pick up with something like Ling, where it just uses a Google Translate voice, which is very robotic and doesn't sound organic, and is not necessarily entirely accurate to what a native speaker would sound like. The last thing that I find to be a little bit frustrating, though I do love the idea, is the writing lessons for the language. So if you are going into a lesson that doesn't use the script from English, so standard Roman letters, if you're going into something like Bengali, or you're going into Russian or some other type of language where it has a different alphabet and different writing system, in theory, this is going to give you the opportunity to practice writing out those letters so that way you can eventually write properly and easily. However, one of the things that I found to be a little bit frustrating is that depending on the lesson, sometimes the strokes that they give you, even if you do it pretty much perfectly on something like an iPad with an Apple Pencil, where ideally it should be as close to just drawing by hand as possible, even if you're following the outlines and the stroke order and everything to a T, sometimes it won't progress. And that is something that I found to be a little bit frustrating, and unfortunately there's no skip button, so you can't even just skip past a character that's not working out for you. So that's something that I'd like to see improved in the future, but it's not really the end of the world. It's just, like I said, a little bit of a pet peeve, and I think that would be something that would be really, really nice if they could fix it and have it where it works perfectly all the time, or even just add a skip button so that you can just kind of go through and learn some of the other characters. In the next section of the video, I wanted to go through all of the lesson types with you in the real world so that we can see how Ling functions and what it's like learning with Ling. Alright, so as I had mentioned before, I've been using Ling quite a bit for learning Afrikaans. So right here, you can see my main page, which has all of the lessons that I've done, and you can sort of see that you have progress for beginner, and you can see all of these different chapters and other things like that. So right here we have our introduction, and basic sentences, numbers and family, numbers and counting, activities, food and tastes. So I'm just going to walk you through a lesson here inside of food and tastes. And so again, you can see that you have pretty much 4 lessons and then you have an exam at the bottom. So let's just go ahead here to lesson 3. And here you're going to be given the word. So you'll hear a narrator say the word.
Suit.
So we can hear that this is pronounced soet. And then right here we have
Dit is baie soet.
a little example sentence. So dit is baie soet, which means this is very sweet. And so then you pretty much go through and you'll learn 2 words.
Sy sop is te souterig.
And so then if we hit continue again, then we'll be given a word in English and we need to match it with the Afrikaans word. So here we are given sweet, so that is soet. And then we'll hit check and we can see that that is correct. So now if we go to next, we're going to be learning a new word. So this is zuur, which is sour. So we could say, here the apple is baie zuur, which is the apple is very sour. So now we're going back here and now it's asking us what salty is. So that is going to be souterig. So souterig. And that is correct. And so now here we have 3 things that we need to match up. So we'll go salty, and that's souterig, and then sour goes to zuur, and then sweet goes to soet.
Bitter. My coffee is baie bitter.
So now we're getting another word. All right, and so now we have another word, and again, another example sentence. And here we're going to be asked to match this word up with the Afrikaans word. So here we're going to go to su, and that is correct. And then heerlijk. So now we know that, and now we have to do the 3 match again. So here we're going to match bitter, we're going to match sweet, and we're going to match salty.
Hierdie appel is baie suur.
Then you're going to be given a little audio sample with a sentence that you're familiar with, and you have to basically say what you heard. So I heard, here the apple is baie zuur. And then we get our little meaning down there, and it'll tell us if we're correct or not. So then we're going to be given an Afrikaans sentence, and then we have to translate that in English word for word. So here, dit is baie zuur. We say this is very sweet. And if you got it correct, then all of your words will line up and you'll get a little green correct symbol, so that is cool. Now here we have sy soup is te souterig, which is his soup is too salty. And you can see, again, correct. Now if we go here, we're given an English sentence and we have to translate this in Afrikaans. So this apple is very sour. So we can say, hierdie appel is baie zuur. and we'll continue. Now we have to translate my coffee is very bitter. So my coffee is baie bitter. All right, so now we have to choose what this means in Afrikaans. So we see bitter, and we have to choose the word in Afrikaans, which is going to be bitter. And now we have spicy, so that's pittige.
Dit is baie soet.
Now we're given another Afrikaans sentence, and we have to choose what the English is. So this is very sweet.
Sy sop is te souterig.
Now his soup is too salty.
Hierdie appel is baie suur.
And this apple is very sour.
Hou jy van die kos?
And so here we have a little conversation where you'll basically hear each person saying what's written here, and you'll have the translation in English underneath so that we can kind of follow along even if the words are not all familiar to you. So that is pretty cool. You can also turn off the English translation if you want, if you hit this button right here. If you do that, then it's all in Afrikaans, and so you can really test yourself a bit there. But then if we hit continue, you'll see that it puts a couple of blanks in here, and we have to choose the correct words to go in. Hou jy van die kos? Ja, ek hou baie daarvan. Ek het baie chilies, baie kurwig. Dit is nie te pittig. Nee, is dit? Nee, dit is niet reg. Dankie. And so we can check here, and we see that we got all of these filled in correctly. So if we hit continue, then we'll get a little summary. So it'll say pretty much all of the words that you learned in this lesson, and you can go ahead and continue. Then you'll be given a little reward, which in this app is going to be in the form of these digital bananas. So you get 200 if you do perfectly, and you'll get less if you do a little bit worse or if you miss something. All right, so here we are in one of the more common languages. So this is going to be Russian inside of Ling. And as I had mentioned, these are going to be a little bit more filled out and a little bit more robust than some of the lessons in more obscure languages like Afrikaans. So if I go in here to say numbers and counting, you'll see that we now have quite a few things. So we have our lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, just like we would have in something like Afrikaans, but we also have writing because Russian uses the Cyrillic alphabet. You're also going to be getting these speaking lessons, which are nice, so that way you can actually have some practice speaking the language, and you have, of course, the exam just like you had in the Afrikaans section. So just so that way you guys can see how speaking works, I'm just going to tap on this. So here you're going to be hearing the native speaker speaking a sentence, and then it's up to you to go ahead and speak that sentence. Здесь живут 130 человек. And so you can see that we have some feedback on our answer, and if you want to, you can try again, or you can hit continue. 10-30. And so you see here that if you pronounce the words properly and correctly, it's going to give you a very good result. So right here it says, perfect, you sound like a native, so that is good. So then we'll try this one. Jit. And what's actually really nice is that if you repeat the speaking lessons, you're actually going to be getting sometimes different sentences to repeat and to work with. So even if you're in the same lesson, if you choose the speaking lesson and you do it once or twice or 3 times, you may actually be getting different things to say. So that is really cool, and that kind of gives you a little bit more motivation to go back and to review things. So I think that that is a really great feature. Even though that is the main way that you're going to be interacting with Ling, you also have the option to do review. So if you go here to the review tab, you can see vocabulary, and so you can review vocabulary from any of the units here. So if I tap on introduction, we'll see all of the words that we learned in the introduction, and so you can go through there and you can revisit those. If you tap on them, you'll hear the pronunciation. So if we go back here again, you can go to dialogue, and then you'll see each of the dialogues for each of the lessons. And so you can go through and play those, and so that is pretty helpful. And then finally, if you want to, you can go to the dialogue tab, and you're given a bunch of different options. So if we go here, we have greetings, and so you have your conversation partner saying hello. And so here, you can choose a whole bunch of different options for saying hello, and it'll tell you a little bit about them. So you can say hello, which is formal masculine. You could say goeie middag, which is good afternoon. You could say goeiemorgen meneer. Goeiemorgen meneer. Good morning in feminine. You could say goeiemorgen, which is good morning masculine. So let's say that we want to choose this one, and then we'll hit send. And so then your conversation partner sends you back another message, and this says how gaan dit? So they're asking how is it going, or how are you? And then you can reply with any one of these. So we'll say that. And then we'll say en jij to ask how they are. Bengali doesn't use typical English letters, and so one of the things that they add for Bengali is they add a writing tool. So if we go here, you get taught how to write the letter A, and you have to basically trace out what this letter looks like. And if you do this on an iPad, I've found that sometimes it can be a little bit hard, because even though you are actually drawing in the area, sometimes it doesn't always pick up. But right now, as I'm doing it on the phone, it's working pretty well, and I think that's because it's giving me a little bit of leeway, since it's obviously only touchscreen on an iPhone. But yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit finicky, so I'm not really the biggest fan of this. So they may have made some improvements to the writing. So it looked like it was doing a pretty good job there. But like I said, when I was doing it on my iPad before, I was having a lot of difficulties. So I think your mileage may vary in terms of how the writing actually goes for you. But like I said, I think that it's a really cool idea and something that will definitely help you out in terms of getting more immersed in the language. All right, now with all of that being said, do I actually recommend you guys to get Ling to learn a new language? Well, I would say yes, but with the caveat that I think that it's almost essential for you to get additional resources to supplement the work that you do within Ling. Now, you can absolutely learn a language with Ling, yes, but its lessons are such that taken alone with no additional work outside of the app, I can't really see you making the kind of progress that you're going to be expecting. Now, you definitely will want to be motivated to learn a language in the first place, to speak the language that you're learning. First and foremost, because without determination, you are just going to end up forgetting everything that you learn in the app. Also, even though it's easy to just get into a rhythm of doing each of the lessons using your phone only, again, I would really recommend you guys to find a quiet place, really sit down, focus on only the process of learning the language that you're learning, fully immerse yourself, And if you do this, you're definitely going to have a much better chance of retaining the things that you're learning, especially if you combine this with note-taking, so that way you really slow down the lesson pace and you can absorb the information at your own pace. Although I really may be sounding like I'm a little bit critical of Ling here, this is something that I would recommend for any language learning app, since without real effort on your side, it doesn't matter how good the curriculum is in your app, or even if you're in college or something like that in a classroom. If you don't honestly want to pursue language learning, you're not going to be making progress. But this app will gamify the process enough to help you to stay motivated and to have it be fun, to keep coming back and learning more. So I definitely could see you making progress. You just have to really stick with it and be sincere in your pursuit of language learning. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and got a lot out of it. Language learning is definitely a challenging activity and something that will not come easy. But I'm hoping that through this series, you're going to be able to be helped out on your journey a little bit, learning a new language. Please remember to drop a like, leave a comment, and share the video, and subscribe for more content. Also, I would love to hear what languages you guys are learning, what apps or systems you use, and yeah, just sort of your recommendations as well. Or if you're learning with Ling, how do you like it? Leave all of those thoughts down below, and I will see you guys later.